many great conservative friends. Speaking of friends, Jake gave me a call. It was about 3 weeks ago. You can sit down, Jake. Relax. It never stops working. He said, Pierre, I have a very important question for you, and I don't want you to be like Trudeau and evade it. Answer it correctly. It's a yes or no. Do you believe in free speech? I said, yes. He said, how would you like to give one? That's how I ended up here today giving this speech. But it is great. My friend Rob Moore from Fundy Royal, we got elected the same year, 2004. Neither of us had a hope in you-know-where to get elected. We both won. And, I got to Parliament Hill and got into a little bit of trouble because I was speaking my mind too much. 25-year-old guy, knows everything, and wants to tell the world. So I went and sat down with Rob, and I said, Rob, I'm getting into all these controversies. What advice have you got for me? And he was from out east. So, of course, he had mounted a fish on the wall that he'd caught in the Atlantic Ocean. And he said, Pierre, you see that fish up there? If he'd kept his mouth shut, he'd still be alive. So, it's great to be out here with my friend Richard Bragdon. What a great champion for the people. You ever seen this guy speak on the floor of the House of Commons? He really lights the place up. And he always fights for our seniors who built this country. When I got to Tobik-Maktaquac to visit for the first time, he said, Pierre, I want to take you to a seniors home where you're going to be a big star. I went, wow, never been a star at a seniors home before. So I showed up and I walked up to a lady and I said, do you know who I am? She said, no, but if you ask the nurse, she'll tell you who you are. It's good to be made humble, isn't it? It's good for the mighty to be made low. You know who I met on the way in? Mary Lou. Where's Mary Lou? Mary Lou, where are you? There she is in the back. Mary Lou has done more than anyone in this room to help us form a conservative government. You know what she did? She has 10 kids and they're all going to vote conservative. When the good book said go forth and multiply, she took it literally. Here we are, what a group, and we're going to multiply some more, aren't we? Yes, we are, because we need to. We need to now more than ever, as Justin Trudeau attacks Atlantic Canadians with this massive new carbon tax hike, right? He's going to hit you with, first of all, it's 14 cents a liter, but that's only the beginning. He wants to vote him out. He wants to hit you with a 14 cents a liter carbon tax, and then he wants to quadruple it if he's re-elected up to 61 cents a liter. Now we see him applying this tax on the Irving refinery. Irving then can compete with its U.S. competitors who don't have to pay the same tax. So then Irving has to put the price on consumers here in New Brunswick. So in essence, Justin Trudeau is making New Brunswickers pay for the uncompetitive policies he imposes on the Canadian worker here in this country. Enough. That's why I want to congratulate your Premier Higgs and the New Brunswick government for standing up and fighting back. There you go. Let me tell you how crazy this tax is. I'm going to tell you the story of Suntech tomatoes, the little miracles of Manotick. Anybody been to Manotick before? Yes. Yeah, you been there? You like Manotick? What do you like about Manotick?
Quiet and small.
It's quiet and small. It's very quaint, beautiful. It's got beautiful old stone buildings from the 1800s. You almost think you're in Atlantic Canada. Quaint, friendly, beautiful people. And they grow tomatoes, these beautiful, tiny little tomatoes. But guess what? Trudeau charges a carbon tax on the CO2 that they release into the greenhouse, even though it's absorbed by the plant life. He missed that day in science class. So what is the economic result of this tax? Well, it means that the Manotick tomato is more expensive in Manotick than the Mexican tomato. So the price signal our government sends to consumers is to buy the tomato that comes from Mexico that had to be transported here by train and truck, burning fossil fuels all the way up to Canada. Aren't we supposed to buy local? Ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't make sense. A Pierre Poilievre-led, common-sense conservative government will axe the tax to bring home lower prices. Le gouvernement mené par Pierre Poilievre a renversé la taxe de carbone de 61 sous le litre de Justin Trudeau pour ramener des prix plus bas et pour ramener le gros bon sens chez nous ici au Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful to be here today. I'm very grateful to be Canadian. I'm blessed. I was born to a 16-year-old unwed mother who couldn't raise me. So she put me up for adoption. To 2 school teachers. But they always taught me that in Canada, it didn't matter where I came from. It mattered where I was going. It didn't matter who I knew. It mattered what I could do. And that's the country I want my kids to inherit. It's the country that brought my wife here as a refugee to Montreal. She managed to get a job. She didn't speak any French, so they taught her French. And then she didn't speak any English, so when she was in her late teens, she jumped on a bus and went over to Ottawa and sold electronics in English, even though she didn't speak the language. And what do you know? She learned how to speak English. She got herself a degree, got herself a terrific job. Her brother's a soldier. Her other brother's a carpenter. Her sister's a nurse. That's the Canadian dream. Doesn't matter where you come from. As long as you're prepared to follow the law and work hard, you can do anything you want. You don't need a famous name. You don't have to come from an aristocratic caste. You just have to have a good heart, a good head, and a lot of hard work, and you can get where you're going, right? But that's not the country we see today. Today, after 8 years of Trudeau, life costs more. Work doesn't pay. Housing costs have doubled. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reign in our streets, and he divides to distract from all these failures so that he can stay on top. But ladies and gentlemen, the good news is we're going to turn the hurt that Trudeau has caused into the hope that Canadians need, aren't we? It starts by getting the inflationary spending under control. As New Brunswickers understand, because they're the only provincial government that balanced the budget 4 years in a row throughout the act. Racking up debts is a burden for our children tomorrow, but also it's inflation today. More dollars chasing fewer goods always equals higher prices. If you got 10 loaves of bread and $10, it's $1 a loaf. You double the number of dollars to 20, it's all of a sudden $2 a loaf. You got twice as much money and the same amount of bread, well, you've doubled the cost. We don't get richer just because we artificially generate new cash. Trudeau created about $500 billion of brand new cash since 2020. That is a 20% increase in the money supply. And that's bidding up the goods that we buy and the interest that we pay. And that shouldn't be a surprise. It's the same experience we've had throughout the ages. Over and over again, this experiment has been tried, and always it has failed. Emperors, kings, presidents, dictators have always spent opulently on themselves. They run out of other people's money. They create more cash as if it was by magic. Henry VIII was a master of this. We know that he liked to clip off the heads of his citizens. He liked to clip off the edges of his coins as well, because they had the British pound, a pound of silver. But he would have his minters clip off the edges so that he could melt those down and make more coins. Well, eventually, vendors stopped accepting those coins, so he started getting crafty. He melted down the British pound of silver, and he reminted it with copper on the inside, just a tiny little layer of silver on the outside, so he could make more coins out of the same amount of silver. Well, what happened? What happened is he put his big ugly face on the front of it. And when people would rub those coins on the inside of their pockets, his nose, which pointed straight out, rubbed against it, and the silver would come off, and you'd have a silver coin with a big red nose. And it's true. So every time Londoners saw that red copper nose. They knew their king had robbed them of their money. And their money supply went up 80%. Guess what happened? The price of everything went up 80%. And people paid more so that those inside the castle walls could have more for themselves. And that's what's happening now. The rich are getting richer. Everyone else is getting poorer. If you've got assets, they have inflated in value. But if you are living off working class wages, your purchasing power has gone down. It's the transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts that we're experiencing here in Canada today, right? And the working people, the folks who actually do the heavy lifting in this country, pay the price for that inflation, so the privileged few can get ahead. So what are we going to do about it? One, we're going to bring in a common sense law called the dollar for dollar law. It requires that the government find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. They brought in this law in the United States in the 1990s, balanced the budget for the first time in the post-war period, paid off $400 billion of debt, but then as soon as the law lapsed, they went right back into deficit and haven't emerged ever since, which proves once again politicians need legal discipline imposed on their spending. Otherwise, they will spend without control. You've been pinching your pennies long enough. It's time for politicians to start pinching your pennies too. Increased the consulting budget by 100%, even though the bureaucracy has grown by 1/3. Why not bring more of the work inside the bureaucracy and have the public servants do it instead of paying $2,000 a day to high-priced consultants? That makes no sense, right? Let's cut the wasteful spending, like the contracts for McKinsey. Here's a company that helped cause the opioid crisis by supercharging the sales of these drugs, and they get $100 million of contracts from the government as a reward. Enough. We should cut that off. We should also bring our money back, stop giving it to foreign dictators. I want the $200 million back from the Asian Infrastructure Bank that we gave to China. Central bank back to its core mandate, which is to protect the purchasing power of our money. The central bank has one job: keep inflation low, not print money for politicians to spend. We will reinstate that discipline. We will have good, hard, solid, reliable money that buys a good living for the people who earn it, my friends. Once again, to earn it, we need powerful paychecks. Powerful paychecks means making work pay. Right now, work doesn't pay. Right. We punish work in Canada. Right. You think about it. A single mom earning $60,000 a year goes out and earns another dollar. She loses 80 cents of that dollar to income tax, payroll tax, child benefit clawbacks, and countless other clawbacks on top of the gas tax, carbon tax, and HST on those taxes it takes for her just to drive to work. We wonder why we have a labor shortage. We tax labor, we get less labor. I will reform the programs and cut the income taxes so that you bring home more of every dollar you earn, and hard work once again pays off. And we'll have bigger paychecks. St. John is a place with incredible potential, surrounded by natural resources, an incredible shipping terminal right over here, one of the most efficient in the world. We've also got access to, we've got a great refinery here, and brilliant engineers, local workers, a fishing industry, countless reasons why this should be one of the most prosperous places on planet Earth. But we've got a federal government that is waging war on our energy sector right now, favoring foreign production rather than domestic. Think about this. We are importing into this city 130,000 barrels of overseas oil every single day, even though we have the third biggest supply of this stuff right beneath our feet. What is the point of that? Why do we want to give our money to foreign dictatorships rather than giving it to Canadian workers? Here's my plan. I'm going to repeal the anti-energy laws so that we can produce our own energy, build our own pipelines, use our own oil, and export our energy to the world. 31,200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas right beneath our feet. The Europeans need it to break their dependence on Putin. The Asians need it to break their dependence on coal. Yet, when Trudeau took office, there were 15 proposed natural gas liquefaction projects on his desk. Not a single one has been completed. It's crazy. He says there's no business case. Well, nobody told the Qataris they've more than doubled their production. No one told the Americans they built 7 export terminals in the same time period. No one told the Germans. The Germans who took an import terminal from idea to proposal to construction to completion in 194 days, they all think there's a business case for natural gas. And we are the ones that should be delivering it. Why? We have the big supply. We also have the shortest shipping distance to Europe and to Asia from North America. And we also have the clean energy with which to power our liquefaction facilities. And how do you liquefy gas? Does anybody know? You cool it down. And what do we have in Canada? Cold weather. It's cold in Canada. In fact, Jake told me it got so cold in Ottawa last winter he saw Justin Trudeau with his hands in his own pockets. But the engineers tell me it's actually 25% cheaper and more energy efficient to liquefy gas in cold Canada than it is in the hot southern Gulf Coast. In other words, we got the Americans beat. If only we could stop beating ourselves. So let's get the gatekeepers out of the way. Let's liquefy that gas. Let's send it to Europe. Let's send it to Asia. Let's bring home the paychecks to Canada. We're going to open our minds again. You know, here we are. Trudeau says we should all drive electric cars. But where does he want us to get the lithium for that? You know, we have the 6th biggest supply of lithium on planet Earth, but we did not produce a single tablespoon of the stuff in 2021. Why? Because it takes as long as 25 years to approve a mine in this country. No wonder we then have to import the lithium for those batteries from coal-burning China and from African countries that use child labor to produce it. So let's get this straight. His plan to help the environment is to promote more coal burning in China and fewer paychecks in Canada. Mine is exactly the opposite. I will green light green projects like nuclear power, like tidal power, like critical minerals mining, but we'll do it by speeding up and making this the fastest place rather than the slowest paid place on Earth in which to get things done. We've got to stop stopping and start starting in this country, right? Stop. And there's nowhere more true than with housing. Unbelievable. Housing costs have doubled in Canada. How many of you can afford a home back here? The little ones. There's tent cities. Yeah, that's right. You can get a tent these days. Tent sales are through the roof since Trudeau took office, right? That must be his housing plan. Wait a second here. It used to be cheap to own a house in Canada. You know, when he took office, the average rent was about $900 across Canada. That includes with the weighting of the big cities like Vancouver and Toronto. Now, it's well over $2,000 just for a single bedroom if you're lucky. The average mortgage payment is up 122% under Justin Trudeau. In fact, housing in Canada is almost twice as expensive as in the United States. They have 10 times the people and a smaller land mass. They have 10 times the demand and lower supply, and yet their prices are far cheaper. Why? Because we have the fewest houses per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. Why do we have the fewest houses? We're the 2nd slowest place in the OECD to get a building permit. All of these delays add on to the cost of getting anything built. A recent study by C.D. Howe Institute took up all the costs of housing. Labor, supplies, land, and even the profit of the builder. Took that number and compared it to the sale price. The difference was over $1 million. So where's the other $1 million going? That's the cost of government delays in Vancouver. In Toronto, it's about $300,000 plus. Now, this is great news. If you're a land speculator, or if you're a mega landlord, you're making more money because the tenants can't go anywhere else because there's nothing else built. This is the problem. We can't build houses in the country. So what's the solution? The answer is to stop funneling federal money to big city gatekeepers. They're the ones blocking the building. I will, instead of just giving them a big blank check, I will say to them, they are required to increase building permits by 15% per year, or they will lose some of their infrastructure money. But if they exceed the 15% goal, I will give them a building bonus. So they're incentivized to get out of the way and let builders build. We've got 37,000 federal buildings. Most of them are empty now with these people working from home. Big, ugly, empty buildings. They're like gigantic statues in honor of our national incompetence. We have people living in tents, and we have empty buildings doing nothing. We're paying to heat them, we're paying municipal taxes on them, we're paying to maintain them, and nothing's happening with them. I'm going to sell off 15% of federal buildings and a bunch more surplus land so that we can turn those properties into homes for our people, and we'll use the proceeds of sale to pay down our deficit. Common sense, right? We want it to be in safe communities. Safe communities. Another thing we used to take for granted. In cities like St. John, not long ago, people didn't even feel they had to lock their doors. A couple decades ago, that was normal. Towns like this, the neighbor would come in, open the door, and take a little bit of milk out of the fridge once in a while, and you knew nothing was wrong. Kids could play safely in the street. You didn't have to worry about them. But Canada's big cities are increasingly turning into crime zones. The violent crime, up 32%. Gang crime has almost doubled, as Rob Moore, our Shadow Justice Minister, can tell you. Trudeau brought in a catch and release policy that allows the same repeat violent offenders to go out on the streets again and again and again. It's crazy. The police will tell you they arrest the same person often 3 times in a day because they're released on bail. In Vancouver, you can look up this letter from the BC mayors. They arrested the same 40 people 6,000 times in a year. That's 150 arrests per offender per year because they keep getting released in the catch and release system Trudeau has brought in place. It's insane. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce a new common sense criminal justice reform that ensures that repeat violent offenders who are newly arrested for a violent crime stay behind bars until their entire sentence is completed. And we're going to have more money for frontline law enforcement and border security. You know where we're going to find that money based on my dollar for dollar principle? We're going to stop spending billions of dollars grabbing firearms back from law-abiding licensed people. Exchange with Trudeau on the floor of the House of Commons. I was asking him about the massive increase in stabbings. And I said, what are you going to do about it? He said, I'm going to ban hunting rifles. Like, stabbings happen with knives, not hunting rifles. It's not the Innu hunter from northern Canada that's stabbing and shooting up downtown Toronto. It's repeat violent offenders. In fact, if you look at the statistics, those with a RPAL or a PAL, those licensed firearms owners, are the least likely people to commit a crime with a gun, right? Why? Because criminals don't get gun licenses, do they? Exactly. I say, Jack, before we go rob that bank, we have to stop by and get our PAL first to make sure that we're compliant with all the rules, right? So the people who have the PAL, the people the government is trying to ban, they're the good guys. Why not put the money into going after the bad guys? Let's take those millions, reinforce the border, stop the 82% of guns that are involved in crime from coming in the first place, and put the repeat violent offenders behind bars to keep all of us safe. Bring home safety. And we're going to bring home hope. There's been a massive crisis of drug overdoses. In fact, drug overdose deaths are up 200% over the last 8 years of Trudeau. Now, it's no surprise why. Well, first of all, the crisis started because greedy, unscrupulous pharmaceutical companies lied about the addictiveness of the opioids. They flooded North America. They went to working class neighborhoods where people were already down in their luck. They told doctors to oversubscribe these drugs. They knew that people would get hooked. And then people who were unemployed went in and said, I got a sore back. The doctor gave them some OxyContin. And the people found out that it wasn't just their back that felt better. Everything felt better until it felt horrible. And this spread right across the country. The American government has since sued those drug companies and recovered $6 billion of proceeds from these big companies. One of them was McKinsey, Justin Trudeau's favorite consulting company. Has Trudeau sued McKinsey? No, he actually gave them over $100 million of contracts to enrich them. The same company that actually advised these other corporations to give out bonuses to distributors for every overdose they could cause. Can you imagine anything more morally as obscene and disgusting than that? And then furthermore, they've gone further. We'll come back to that in a second. They've gone further than that. Since the drug overdose crisis began, the government's now giving out tax-funded opioids, going to the same companies to buy hydromorphine, which is an opioid as strong as heroin, and give it out as a so-called safe supply. Well, the problem is that the addict gets bored of the hydromorphine because it's not strong enough, and they sell it to kids and use the profits to buy fentanyl. And that is what is driving this massive surge of drugs right across the country. So here's my common sense plan. 1, we're going to stop giving out tax-funded drugs. We're going to stop that. 2, we're going to put that money using the dollar-for-dollar principle into treatment and recovery. We are going to sue the big drug companies to make them pay for the additional costs that they impose. We are going to open up beautiful facilities, like Scott Oak opened up in honor of his son Bruce that he lost to an overdose. He opened this beautiful facility where they have counseling, job training, exercise, yoga, sweat lodges. And now soon they'll have attached housing for new graduates to go and live in a supported environment so that as they get better, they can come back for counseling and some more exercise and to mentor the incoming addicts on how to turn their lives around. Because there is hope. There is hope for people to turn their lives around and achieve redemption, to go back and take care of their families and be good citizens. We can restore that hope by investing in recovery, not tax-funded narcotics. We can bring all of our loved ones home drug-free, and that's what we'll do. And we're going to bring home our freedom, aren't we? We're going to bring home our freedom. The reason why 300,000 to 400,000 people a year come to this country, it's not because of our weather. It's because of our freedom. You know, when Laurier was asked, what is Canada's nationality? He couldn't define us based on religion or ethnicity or even language. We were all so mixed up back then that we couldn't be defined by those traditional national characteristics. Instead, he said Canada is free and freedom is its nationality. And so it is today. Even though it feels like it is under attack. We have a prime minister who wants to censor what you can see and say on the internet. C11.
Boo!
We already see that gives the CRTC the power to manipulate the algorithms that determine what show up in your newsfeed. Margaret Atwood, not a conservative, a liberal author, said this is creeping totalitarianism. To have the government decide what artists can produce and what people can see. And then we see it on our campus. with the woke censorship. You saw they kicked Jordan Peterson out of the University of Toronto. And now they want us, the body that regulates psychologists want to kick him out of his profession because he retweeted something that I put out and because he dared to criticize Justin Trudeau. You know, you got a problem with Jordan Peterson? Debate him! Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. Fool yourself.
They'll debate. They don't want to debate those. They know they'll lose the debate. And that's why they try to shut down the debate. And we have Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. To be or not to be? That is the question. My answer is this. A Poilievre-led government will require university campuses commit to upholding Section 2B, freedom of expression, and I will repeal C11 to bring back freedom of speech to all Canadians. We will repeal all of the government's internet censorship and media control laws. We will make sure there is no central bank digital currency. No mandatory digital ID. No mandatory vaccination.
Yeah.
I will ban all of my ministers and my senior government officials from any involvement in the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Our purpose is to bring back and make Canada the freest country on earth. And it's based on this assumption. It's based on the common sense of the common people. You see, our friends on the woke left, they have an interesting but highly contradictory philosophy. Because on the one hand, they believe that human nature is entirely altruistic as long as it's carried out through government, right? But private citizens, they say, can't be trusted with anything. So the same person who can't govern himself can govern everyone else. That man is so flawed that he can't make decisions for himself, but made into a government authority, all of a sudden he's so perfect that he can make all the decisions for the rest of the world. Well, it's all based on the notion that they are made of finer clay than everyone else. And that everyone should just defer to their virtue and their superior wisdom, right? They look down on everyone else. The hardworking people that we meet every day. You know, one of my favorite stories of Winston Churchill is not his great speeches or his turns of phrase or the jokes he told or even the soaring rhetoric he uttered. It was when he went and walked in the streets of London that had been destroyed by the German Luftwaffe. And he would talk with the people, hear their stories. One day he happened upon a lady who was buried under rubble. She was in her late 70s or early 80s, and they scraped away the rubble. He got on his knees and helped her to his feet. And she turned and looked at him. He was grateful to her, but she said, "Thank you." She walked away. Moments later, his staff noticed that there were tears coming down his face, and he stood in stone silence. Finally, he said, "There goes greatness." So he understood. The greatness that wins wars is not the greatness of a king or a queen, a prime minister, or even a general. It was the greatness of the barber who downed his scissors to pick up a rifle, of the private that jumped out of the trenches into harm's way. It was the ordinary people it was the women, the tea ladies who went into the factories to make the munitions. Those ordinary people were the great people. See, if you want to see greatness, my friends, don't look to those on top, look to those all around you. All around you, in the trenches. You see, they call them ordinary people, but the waitress who balances 10 dishes on one tray, serves 15 tough customers at a time, works a 12-hour shift, gets home in time to help her kid with math, and balances her budget on a minimum wage salary is not ordinary. She is extraordinary, my friends. The farmer who masters the sciences of the skies and the soil to bring food from his field to your fork is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. The electrician who captures lightning from the sky, runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. These extraordinary people should be masters and not servants in their own land. They have both the virtue and the wisdom to make their own decisions. Their names are not in the newspapers when they pass away. No words are spoken of them in Parliament. But when they walk through heaven's gates, the trumpets sound for them, and a murmur goes out from God's angels, there goes greatness. Thank you very much, and God bless. Thank God.